8 years after 9/11, Osama Bin Laden is still thought to be alive and free. This video emerged in 2007, although it's not clear when it was recorded. The closest American forces got to him was here, as they bombarded the tunnel complexes of the Tora Bora Mountains. And now President Obama's Democrat allies are using a new report to blame the Bush administration for that failure and the fact Al-Qaeda is not yet broken. The report says the Bush administration could have caught Bin Laden and his lieutenants when they were trapped in the Tora Bora Mountains in eastern Afghanistan, just 3 months after September the 11th. It says on or about the 16th of December, Bin Laden and his immediate circle walked unmolested out of Tora Bora and disappeared into Pakistan's unregulated tribal area. At the time, fewer than 100 U.S. Special Forces were looking for them, but nearby Marine Corps and Army divisions were kept on the sidelines. President Obama's allies are blaming George Bush, but at the Commonwealth Summit, Gordon Brown has been critical of Pakistan's present government. Still not doing enough, he says, against Al-Qaeda.
We've got to ask ourselves why 8 years after September the 11th, nobody has been able to spot or detain or get close to Osama Bin Laden. Nobody's been able to get close to Zawahiri, the number 2 in Al-Qaeda. And we've got to ask the Pakistan authorities, security services, army and politicians to join us in the major effort that the world is committing resources to, and that is not only to isolate Al-Qaeda but to break them in Pakistan.
Pakistan feels bruised by that, pointing out they've sent larger forces into Waziristan against Al-Qaeda recently.
The democratically elected government of Pakistan has shown resolve and determination to take the militants on. And I think today there's a greater recognition of that by the US, the Europeans, all over the world. There is an acknowledgement that Pakistan today is determined to fight the militants.
So why are accusations flying around this weekend about who's to blame for failures in Afghanistan and Pakistan? Well, because both Gordon Brown and President Obama need to justify to their citizens sending extra troops to Afghanistan, with the president's big announcement due on Tuesday. James Robbins, BBC News, Trinidad.
Well, we cross live to Washington and speak to Major General Peter Gilchrist, who's the former Deputy Commanding General of Combined Forces Command in Afghanistan. Major General, thank you very much for joining us on BBC News. What more do you think Pakistan can do to help break Al-Qaeda? The country is obviously going to be very sensitive to any suggestion that it's following a Western agenda.
Well, I think it's as the Prime Minister said, odd that after 8 years there has been no trace of these people. But I think one has to look at what the Pakistani government are doing at the moment, which is a tremendous effort. They've cleared the Swat Valley, which was held by Taliban, and are now taking on the Taliban in Waziristan. And so they are conducting a very rigorous and aggressive campaign. But I think the issue that we need to look at is whether they have learnt the lessons, the same lessons that NATO, United States and ourselves have learnt, whilst we've been conducting these same kinds of operation on the other side of the border.
And Pakistan may need to deploy some of the many, many troops it has focused on the border with India. Do you think that's going to happen?
Well, I think that's a major concern, is that there remains almost a paranoia about the fact that India remains an existential threat to the Pakistani state. And I'm certain that this is something that the West ought to be dealing with in parallel with trying to encourage the Pakistanis to do more on their northern border. It's quite clear that if we could remove more troops from the Indian side of the country, then they would be able to make a greater effort. And I think that is incumbent on the West to help them work with the Indians to reduce their views of that particular threat.
In the years since September 11th, we've frequently heard the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan described as porous. Tell us your assessment, if you would, Major General, of the security situation on the border now, and how well are the Afghanis and the Pakistanis cooperating on that particular issue?
Well, I think there have been various border coordination points set up, but it is a very long border, very easy to cross. It's very difficult to monitor the whole extent of it, and so one is never going to be able to do that. And indeed, many of the people live and work either side of it, and they don't recognise the Durand line, which was drawn by the UK many years ago, and literally follows the high ground. And so there is a disputed border between the two countries. It is a de facto border, but the Afghan government don't yet understand it. So I think as we encourage the Pakistanis to do more, we need to encourage far greater coordination between the activities on both sides of the border, so that the militants don't have a free run across that.
OK, Major General Peter Gilchrist, thank you very much indeed for your time.